Talking about the debate.
Hey!
So where we left off, Richard was offering his media insider take on what it means to be a man versus a woman in the media. Richard, give us a recap of the points.
Well, like I said, men are judged on 5 categories, women are judged on 10. Yes, the other 5 that women are judged on is unfair because men are doing the same things, but you can make the choice to say, I'm going to beat you in the 5 that I'm judged on, that we're judged on together, jointly, and I'm going to also beat you in the 5 that you're not judged on I'm in. So I could get 100 points, you can only get 50 points. Hillary did that on Tuesday, and we saw it. Now, what I want to talk about was the fact that Donald Trump just kept drinking all that damn water.
Water seems to be incredibly problematic for Republicans. Yeah. We saw it with Marco Rubio in that awkward miniature water bottle sip.
So I want to know how many glasses of water were under that podium.
Well, I saw that the moderator had 2 glasses of water. So Donald Trump perhaps had more than 2.
There's no way that he took him 90 minutes to drink that whole cup of water. How many times he was sipping from it?
Maybe it was like, okay, so clearly whatever was going on with Donald Trump's debate prep, they did, that was not a strategic sipping.
No, well,
water,
I thought,
right?
no. It wasn't, and the sniffling.
Okay, the sniffling was weird. I know
maybe he didn't get enough sleep, but clearly I thought his people were like, we're gonna, prep him on a couple of issues, and we're gonna let Donald be Donald. And that didn't work
Donald
very
could have been Donald. He was Donald, right?
He really was.
And I think that his strategy and those tactics did work for him very well in the Republican debates, didn't they?
I mean, if you say so.
He's the nominee. I mean, he basically obliterated some of the candidates from the debates alone. Some of the quips that he had during the debates and the way that he just when you're up against 8 other men or 10 other men, it's okay for Donald to be Donald because he says some crazy stuff that's interesting and people are like, whoa, it's Donald Trump. And then 8 other people talk for another 10 minutes.
Well, that's the point. I think in the larger debates, he could bury himself on the substantive issues. So when they have these, in-depth conversations about how you deal with ISIS or how you deal with Aleppo, where he's not very skilled, he just shuts up.
He shuts up, lets them say their boring stuff.
And then he just comes with a quippy one-liner. In this debate, because it was 90 minutes versus 90 minutes, and, he was being, he was saying things like, oh, well, I was never for the war in Iraq. And they're like, no, you were for the war in Iraq. Or stop and frisk is great, and it's actually unconstitutional. So, I think there's moments where his team didn't prepare him enough to answer some of those really hard questions.
Now, here's an interesting question, something that I saw talked on after the fact. The role of the moderator in all of this, right?
Lester disappeared.
Yeah, so Lester, I felt like he was kind of manhandled by the 2 big personalities that were on stage. He was, in many cases, unable to rein them in and to get them to move on to another topic, which is to be expected to a certain degree in the presidential debates because the candidates are told that it's in their interest to get as many words out as possible. Now, where Lester maybe could have done better, and it's kind of just a philosophical question, is it the job of the moderator to fact check the candidates?
Yes, I do believe it is a job of the moderator to fact check the candidates. And and here's the thing, I think Republicans it was unfair because Donald Trump got fact checked more than Hillary.
He lied more than Hillary.
He did lie more than Hillary, but I think Lester could have fact checked Hillary honestly on the gold standard. It's Donald Trump fact checked her on the gold standard.
He did. And that is the one thing where listen, she said it. That's a fact. She was
And I think her argument is fair, where she says, I was pro TPP where it was in the negotiations at that time. And I thought the negotiations before and lead up to it was a gold standard, but the end result wasn't a gold standard. That makes sense. I know that's a lot of explaining. People are like, oh, that's a flip-flop. But to me, that makes sense. Because you could be like, okay, I like the color. If you are buying something, if you're buying a dress, let's say, for example, and you and the dressmaker go to the dress place and you find the best fabric. I love this fabric. This fabric is great. This fabric is the gold standard for a great dress. And if the dressmaker makes an awful dress with that fabric, then you would say, well, the fabric was a gold standard, but...
Sure. But here's the litmus test with this,
he doesn't
right?
Believe me.
No, I do believe you. And
he thinks I'm spinning.
I agree. Well, you are... The way that you tell in the litmus test is you go back and you figure out what was really going on at the time when Hillary said this was the gold standard? What did the trade deal look like? What provisions were in place? But there is some paper trail. And if you were able to ever actually find out, what I imagine you would see is there probably wasn't that big of a difference between that and the final one. But I think it's a good no. I think they're pretty close.
I mean,
still.
I think like we were still.
But I think it's a great spin line. I think it's good.
We still had to deal with the Straits of Malacca and Malaysia. Like that didn't get done until the latter end of the deal.
Okay, but I mean,
which
going
in
from
Malaysia and the Strait. Well,
going from gold standard, which is literally gold standard is the best thing ever, to I am anti.
Let me be
is
very
a big
clear
difference.
For those folks at home who don't know. So the TPP deal, one of the reasons why it's a really bad deal is because Malaysia is part of Malaysia is part of the deal, but Malaysia is a state that literally slavery is legal.
Which is problematic.
Which is problematic for the American worker. Because one, we're anti-worker, it's against our Constitution. But two, it drives down the prices of wages here in America. But the reason why Malaysia made it into the trade deal was because of the Straits of Malacca. It's a small, narrow passage, it's a trade route that Malaysia said, well, fine, if we're not part of the deal, we're going to lock down the Straits of Malacca. Which is
incredibly important. I mean, you don't move things into that region
unless you're going through the Straits of Malacca, which is why they're in it, which is why the deal is bad. But just
I mean, that's one of the reasons why the deal.
Yeah, that's just one.
But that's a really relevant one, and sometimes that.
And I'm not anti-trade. I mean, I'm not anti-trade. I'm fair. I'm for fair trade, not free trade.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think Hillary had a good line when she's talking about how we produce all this crap and it needs to go somewhere, right?
Right, but I feel as though she mishandled. I mean, she really should have said. I mean, I feel like we're focusing on the first 10 minutes of the debate, which is like there's 80 minutes after that, right? But
we're not even going to make it to that.
But she should have said NAFTA wasn't a good deal for the American people. I mean, there's new vocabulary words.
She could have said that.
Like maquiladores was created because of NAFTA.
She could have said that, but I mean, how much does she want to tarnish the legacy of?
Well, girl, did you want to win or do you want to lose? Do you want to win and tarnish somebody's legacy, or do you want to lose with legacy intact? That's the question.
You want to win.
I'm trying to win.
Trying to win.
But I think we'd be mistaken if we didn't talk about. I talked about a little bit at the top of the show, but two pieces. I know we're running out of time.
We got like a minute.
We have a minute left, but I want to get 10 seconds about this Law and Order stop and frisk from you.
Sure.
What do you think about it?
Oh, I don't know.
So that's his 10 seconds on that. And so the Rosie O'Donnell.
I can't believe they brought up Rosie O'Donnell.
Well, he brought up Rosie. I thought it was funny.
Well, I mean, I did think it was funny, but like, I mean, I think Donald Trump's like original quote on Rosie O'Donnell is like he said, like, I mean, the fact that like people are willing to divorce Donald Trump from 5 to 8 years ago and now is pretty ridiculous. Like, what do you call her? A fat slob?
Yeah, fat slob.
Like, that's your president, right? Barack Obama 5 to 8 years before he was running was not saying that anywhere.
Yeah. But the fact that he was like, well, I said it. Yeah, I said those things. But I was only talking about Rosie O'Donnell. And everybody knows it's true.
I mean, don't get me wrong. It's funny, but,
I was just like, wow, Rosie O'Donnell made it in the debate. So did Sean Hannity.
He did, which I'm sure
I like Sean. Not politically, but as friendly. And he was like, and call Sean Hannity.